Hello, puppies and kittens. We are interviewing another, let's say, refugee from the Islamic world. This is Meriem, and she is the leader of ex-Muslims of Minnesota. Now, I have to tell you that when I heard that name, I called Mohammed Saeed, who's the founder of Ex-Muslims of North America, and I asked him about you, and he said that you are wonderful. So very much looking forward to hearing your story. I mean, that's quite a nice summation. You very rarely hear a succinct description like that one. So, Meriem,
Yeah.
I've heard a few stories from people who have gotten away from Islam and who have gotten away from politically related situations in their home countries, and sometimes those stories are very intriguing. They're interesting adventures. One even made it into a made-for-TV documentary movie, and I happened to get a chance to interview that person face to face. And I mean, not all of those stories turn out with happy endings. I'm going to assume yours is a happy ending. You made it here.
Yes.
I want to hear the adventure along the way. So how did you get started? Let us know about your background.
All right. Yeah. I was born in a desert climate in southern Tunisia. That's in North Africa. I was born in a marginalized city near Libya. I had a broken family, unfortunately, and I was living in a dysfunctional patriarchal society, just another Muslim society, if I can say that. I would say my whole life I have endured unimaginable amounts of trauma, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at home, in the street, at school. I remember my biggest dream as a 5-year-old was to become a bird so I can fly away to freedom.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Tunisia.
Yeah. So Tunisia is a Muslim country, and what I mean by that is that it's not a secular country. There is no separation between religion and state. So most of the laws are probably similar to other Middle Eastern and some Asian countries. Like you can guess, I guess. So Tunisia is a little different, I would say, culturally from the Middle East. There are parts, especially in the north part of the country, that are very affected by the French culture. We have a history of colonization. We have a very diverse culture. That is something that I'm very proud of. Like we have a Berber heritage. We speak Arabic. We speak French. We have diverse ethnicities. And yet, I don't think we embrace those differences as much as we should. I believe there's a lot of problems in Tunisia. The first one is being Islam. Personally, I think that is my biggest priority. There's a lot of racism, and there's a lot of patriarchy that it is. It's a male-dominated society. And if I could say anything from my personal perspective, is that most of the problems in Tunisia, like including the low economic growth and all of that, I attribute most of that to the religion. I attribute that to the fact that it's a Muslim country. And the only solution is either radical reformation or a separation between religion and state.
It's unfortunate that in a secular country there are so few of us who understand what the importance of secularization is. So, in your personal journey, tell us a little bit about your childhood, please.
Yeah, I spent the first 18 years of my life being someone I was not. I was told what to wear. I was told what to do. I was told what to think, where to go. I wasn't at all an independent human being. I could say my biggest identity when I was a child is that I always knew that I was in man's property. I was in man's honor. I was simply an appearance. I was just an appearance that needed to be covered and oppressed and put away in the corner.
And when you say covered, you're talking about the hijab, right? Not the burqa thing.
Yes, I did wear hijab for a long time.
And how did you feel about that?
It is interesting because, believe it or not, I feel like if I could say I was oppressed and I was forced into wearing hijab, I myself forced myself to do it. Because, growing up a Muslim, there's a lot of talk about hell and about the punishment of God. There's a lot of fear. Which I think these are the extremes when it comes to Islam. It's either they scare you or they seduce you. I was told that if I don't wear hijab, I was going to be molested and harassed. And obviously, later on, after I worn the hijab, I was not protected whatsoever. Muslim countries have the highest rates of sexual harassment. So, what could I say? I would say that if a woman is listening to me right now, I would say go live your life independently. Them saying that wearing hijab will protect you, that's a lie. You will be fooling yourself, and that's not true. What they're trying to do is that they're trying to cover you, and they're trying to impose their beliefs on you. I don't think you should be living like a servant. There are countries out there and there are cultures out there that would let you realize that you are beautiful and strong enough to live this life on your own terms. And the irony is that I do have a lot of women on social media, and since the day I came out as an ex-Muslim atheist, who condemn me and shame me for my activism and for my feminism. And the only thing I could say to that is that birds who are born in a cage think flying is an illness. And I've been there. I was that Muslim woman who believed in an ideology that puts her in her own prison. I was Muslim, and I was the same way. I have forced myself to wear the hijab, along other forces. And I could probably come up with other examples of how I think, because I was a Muslim, I've created my own intellectual prison, especially. I could probably keep going about my childhood, because what I think is that I was born different. I just used to be this small rebellious kid in Africa. It was me against the Islamic teachings and traditions of my society. I could not easily submit and kneel to the patriarchy and the violence and the humiliation that women have to endure in those toxic environments. And for that, I was severely punished.
Give me an example of that. And while you're discussing that, I don't mean to burden you, but my audience is all about audio, and they're suggesting in the chat that maybe the sound is not coming from your mic, maybe it's coming from the built-in mic. Can you check your settings on that while you tell us a little bit more, as you were talking about your childhood there?
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. Well, let's see. I'm going to try to stay still.
Take a moment to do that, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do I mean that I was probably rebellious as a kid? So I always had it in me. I always talked back since I was like a small child. I've always liked to argue at school, at home. I've always said no, or I've always asked why. Why are you asking me to wear this? Why are you not letting me go out on my own? Why are you forcing me to do chores? And I wanted an answer, but I've never got one. The answer was always violence, unfortunately. As a kid, I used to sneak behind everyone's back and watch American movies, and my favorite show was Hannah Montana. And I'd learn about this invincible great country called America, where girls become rock stars. And I knew since I was small that I would get here one day or die trying.
That is outstanding. I hope that you haven't been too terribly disappointed. You didn't pick exactly the right time to come to the United States, unfortunately. Hopefully, a year from now, the situation will be, or in a month from now, your situation should be a whole lot better. We hope. Can you make an adjustment? Can you make an adjustment on your mic? Just check to make sure that your computer is using your microphone and not the built-in mic.
see what I can do.
Yeah, I should have noticed this before we went live. I apologize we didn't. But if that's good, we'll just continue. I think everybody can hear you otherwise anyway.
I can try to take this off. How do I sound now? Just be honest.
You sound fine. It's only a problem when I speak, because then I can hear my voice back without your headphone. So it needs to be, the other issue is that it needs to be using the mic that's on your headphones. I mean, I've got my own mic. You can't see it here, but I've got this dedicated mic, and your computer may not be aware of the mic you're using.
I see. Probably I should have brought a spare. I am so sorry.
Yeah, it's no problem. It's not. We spoke before. Her and I spoke before, and there was a huge static problem that every minute or so there would be like this unintelligible static that was happening. That's not what's happening now. It's just it's a minor. It's not a quality recording. It is what we're getting at, and I'm sure we can get that. You're using the same mic that you were using on your laptop. It sounded fine when you were on your laptop. So I'm thinking that your desktop must not know that we're using that mic.
I see. Okay, I just changed something. You let me know.
It's fine for me. It's fine for me. If somebody says right click on volume, open sound settings, look for input device. But I didn't want to turn this into a tech support meeting, and I hate that people are so pedantic on sound. Yeah, somebody's saying that they can't hear you. I'm sorry, they cannot. I can, and I'm ready to go on, because we had a big issue when we tried to do this before. Thank you, Barry Lewis, for the $4.99. We had another one earlier. We had Doubting Thomas, $10 super sticker. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we can continue. I don't want to hold it up on this. So you had your childhood. You go through adolescence and everything. You're questioning all of your background. What was it? I mean, you found the enticement toward the United States, in contrast to your situation. I know you probably don't want to go into a lot of details about that, but I just want to make sure you've covered the last that we need to talk about Tunisia before we move on to how you made your escape, both from Islam and from your home country.
Yes. I mean, if I could say one last thing about my childhood, is that it was very lonely and very sad. And I could say that I was breathing bits of hope from watching movies, reading about philosophy and the Age of Enlightenment, and doing some art, and that's how I survived my trauma. I swear, like without my resilient brain, I would be dead today.
I have very little experience with people coming from your situation. I remember one weekend in Dubai. I happened to be in Dubai on this one weekend, and I was at a concert, of all things, a Scandinavian death metal concert. And some of the women that were in this bar were local Arabic. Shut up, dog! Damn it. He's got to do that like every 10 minutes. So anyway, I'm having a drink with these women, and I was surprised that they're saying that the only thing that was advantageous about being in Dubai, as opposed to being in Saudi Arabia, was that in Dubai, there were places like this bar where Westerners could legally go and have alcohol. And so the Arabic women could go in jeans and T-shirts and with their hair down and all of that, as long as they weren't recognized. So they're in a situation where they can be put in prison, but they also want to express themselves. They just want to be regular people, which I find that a lot of people coming from that part of the world don't seem to understand. Or certainly legal systems aren't allowing that. Women are just wanting to be regular people and express themselves and so forth. And
no, the blood and the life of a woman and the dignity of woman is less than that of a man in an Islamic culture. Now, that is based on my experience, and that is based on facts. I think it should be common sense by now that women in countries like Syria and Pakistan and even in places that are a little more developed culturally, like Tunisia and Morocco, they are not having fun. They do not have their full rights. And it is all because of Islam. I mean, my identity as a woman is probably the biggest reason why I've left Islam. I could not be a female and be a Muslim. I could not be, how about this? I could not be a feminist, free female and be a Muslim. I'd be a hypocrite if I did that. I'd be lying to myself in the mirror.
But we've heard activists over here that tell us that Islam is a feminist religion, that Islam even favors women if you talk to the right apologist.
So where do you want to start? Okay, do we start with okay, let's go back. Let's look at the Islam. Let's look at the primary sources. Okay, their favorite latest revelation, the Quran. Do we talk about the wife beatings? I think chapter 4, verse 34. It says, "Those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them. Then, if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally beat them." But if
forsake them in bed.
Forsake them in bed, and finally beat them. And if they obey you, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is the ever exalted and grand. Honestly, if this Allah was to exist for real, I'd tell him to go get a psychotherapist, because it sounds like he has some sadist tendencies. I think sadism is a big problem that I attribute to Islam. Men are men who, the more Muslim you are, and I say the more Muslim because some people like to say, or the more radicalized you are. What's radical about people becoming more Muslim? Do you think beating your wife is radical? That's at the heart of your religion. Do you think killing homosexuals is radical? Do you think what ISIS does is radical? All the crimes that we attribute to ISIS, you can find references to that in the Hadith and in the Quran.
Yeah, in my reading of the Quran, I've come to the conclusion that it seems to have been written almost entirely for incels. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's referring to involuntary celibate people, men who cannot entice women, who then have this other outlet, which is often bigotry and violence and so forth. I trust you follow what I'm talking about there.
Exactly. It was written by men who I believe were sexually suppressed, who wanted to marry 6-year-old girls, just like the Prophet did.
But they don't consummate. They don't consummate until she's 9. So.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. They did not have sex with her until she was 9. Oh my gosh. How dare I forget about that? So.
I haven't gotten to chapter 4 yet. I'm reading the Quran in the order of revelation. And so somehow or other, the order, why was the Quran written out of order? I don't know. It doesn't seem to have an intelligible order, because when I read it in the order of revelation, it doesn't make any more sense. As a matter of fact, it refers to things that we should have already read in the chronological order of printing. So I'm pretty sure that the order of revelation is wrong too, but then everything I've read so far in the Quran has been wrong in one way or another.
Yeah, and exactly. And if we keep going about, let's go back to those people who say that Islam is actually a feminist religion and it gives women freedoms and stuff. One thing that lots of women, Muslim women, say is that hijab is a choice. Oh, Islam gave us the choice. And again, chapter 33, verse 59, it says, "Tell your wives and daughters and the believing women that they should cast their outer garments over their persons. That is more appropriate, so they may be not recognized and not molested." Not molested? You're one Google search away from hijabi girls being molested in Egypt, hijabi girls being molested in Pakistan. It is the reality. I wore hijab and I was molested on a daily basis. Actually, I have a funny story for you. I remember as a teenager. I think you're muted. Sorry, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Oh, I can't. I hate when my dog goes off. I have to mute, and then I'm an old man walking modern technology. I completely forget. So, how do you make this transition from saying, I was raised in a Muslim country, I was molested every day, which reminds me of a funny story. How do you
It
make it?
reminds me of a fun because it is funny. So I swear I'm trying to find some irony in the pain and the suffering that I have survived because that is the only way for me to keep going. I remember when I was a teenager and I was depressed, like I was suicidal depressed. I was very angry, and I was one day sitting and I was like, well, I'm being sexually harassed every day. We do have some police presence, right? And I'm like critically thinking with myself, maybe I should go to the police and finally, report the sexual harassment. I went to the police station to report sexual harassment, and I was sexually harassed by the police officers.
Yeah. Now, if you report molestation, aren't you in worse trouble?
I don't even know why.
Well, to give you an example, I mean, when I went to Dubai, it happened to be like just a week or two after the prince or whoever it was had to absolve somebody. There was a Norwegian woman that was visiting in Dubai, and she got raped. And as was their way, woman's testimony is worthless, and you had to have a male witness, and there was no male witness to the rape, and therefore that makes her the guilty party, which is bizarre. But she doesn't come from a Muslim country. She came from Europe. She came from Norway, and her story got out into the public media, and it caused such humiliation that the leader, and I forget how they refer to the leader of Dubai at the time, he was personally very embarrassed for his country on the world stage being shamed by this event. So he had to let the woman go. He had to make an exception to their own laws to allow her to escape, because he wants Dubai to be a first world country like everybody else, and he can't because he's inextricably tied to the Quran.
Exactly. And he won't dare, even if he wanted to. What was his name? I think there was this prince of Saudi Arabia like a few years ago, and he came out and he was like, I think we should let women drive cars in my country. The amount of hate, the amount of shame he received for saying that he believes maybe. And this guy has not by any means distinguished himself as a liberal. And he received the hate from his own citizens. Sometimes I like to quote Sam Harris when he said, it seems that if Muslims are given the freedom to vote, they will vote to tear their own freedoms apart and curtail our freedoms as well. And
unfortunately, we're seeing something similar politically in this country right now, where people very often are voting against their own interests. And I don't want to get into our politics. I mean, this is about your story, so I want to stay focused on that.
Yeah, and I think this would be like a good time to try to tell you how I slowly realized that is the problem. It's because even when positive things happen, it seems that Islam never fails to disappoint me, never fails to use that good thing to make a bad thing. For example, in 2011, the Tunisian revolution erupted, and I was happy that night because I thought I was going to finally embrace my freedom. I mean, people were dying in the name of freedom and dignity to abolish tyranny and oppressive regimes. And then my heart broke into pieces a few months after, when ISIS invaded Libya around 2012. When my fellow free citizens were marching in the streets, demanding the application of Sharia law. When an Islamist government took over, there were suicide bombings at synagogues, Western embassies. There was a bombing at the Bardo Museum. There were mass shootings of tourists and innocent people just because they're not Muslim. And ISIS took credit for that. Those were the days I realized that the problem was not with power and poverty. It is within the ideology itself. The problem is Islam itself, because the bloodshed and the misery that I was witnessing is not the work of radicalization and low economic growth. Those are acts mandated by the Quran, and I can read Arabic, I can understand Arabic, and I read the Quran, and I know I saw it. Okay, and that's when I started to even hate myself. I had like this existential crisis at such a young age when I was like, how can I hold this book and read that my husband can beat me just because I refuse sex? How can I hold this book reading that I could be stoned to death for embracing my sexuality? How can I keep going? How am I going to live? I think those were the times when I started to seriously.
Did it ever occur to you that the Muslim version of heaven, the man gets sex robots in heaven, and he gets his collection of wives, however many he had. But of course, the woman isn't rewarded with like her own little cadre of Chippendales dancers. I mean, instead, the women and if you're lesbian, you just never get a break. But if you're but if you're a heterosexual woman, then you are tied to your husband even in the afterlife. And what choice do you? He gets other lovers, you don't. You get no. You get to stay. You get to keep your eyes on the floor, be modest, and not meet anyone else's gaze, while he sits on the sofa in Allah's Hotel California forever, drinking non-alcoholic beverages served to them by perpetual children who never grow up and spend eternity as waiters. The whole thing about the Muslim heaven just I found alarming, but especially the thing about the virgins that are created to simply created who exist only for the pleasure of the tenants of heaven. They didn't have an existence on earth. They were created for him then, even if he already has a wife. I don't know if any of that impacted you, but I found it all bizarre.
Oh, come on. I mean, there's this thing we call in Arabic, it's a thing in Islam called milk al-yamin, which is something that Muhammad was an expert on, which means enslaving women. Like, enslaving women is, how am I going to say this? A hobby, okay? For many, it's okay, I'll go with you. Let's call them radical Muslims. What I call them is devoted Muslims. Those are Muslims who love their religion and understand it and have the chance to apply it. Enslaving women, it could look in so many different ways, okay? It could be intellectually, it could be by treating her like a servant, it could be modern day slavery. It could be using her as your own honor. And now that you brought the idea of heaven, I just remembered something. There was this kid in my neighborhood. He was my neighbor. I grew up with this kid. I think when we turned 18, he joined ISIS and he filmed himself. And before he bombed himself in Libya, and he was saying that he cannot wait to meet those virgins in heaven. And just the idea, I knew this kid. He was a little innocent human being. And that right there, it just shows you the amount of suffering that Islam is able to cause. And yet, Muslim apologists dare to come to me and they tell me those people that do not represent Islam. Your Muslim experience does not represent Islam. And then who? Then who represents it? I mean, doesn't it like daddy has like a PhD in Sharia law? Didn't Bin Laden grow up like a millionaire in Saudi Arabia? What about the Al-Azhar and what they teach? One of the biggest accredited universities. Over 2 billion graduates. Those people do not understand Islam, and you do. I don't understand. I guess I'll really never forget that. That was very traumatic for me when my neighbor bombed himself. That just showed me the reality that I was living in, and I like promised myself. I made a truce, and I was like, okay, I'll give myself 2 years. If I don't get out of here and breathe some freedom, I would die honorably. I would take my own life with honor because I will not live on my knees forever. I can't. I'm not meant to be. I was born this way. And from here, I guess I could tell you a little bit about my American dream. Yeah, so let's call it my journey to freedom. In 2015, I earned my baccalaureate in that same desert village, and I left.
What degree did you say you earned?
I earned my baccalaureate in economics and management, and I left that place, which I don't dare to call home, at the age of 18. I remember I told myself that I would either go live free, free to speak, free to explore, free to love, or free to be who I really am, or I would, for real, just consider suicide, because there was no third choice for a woman like me, not after everything that I have witnessed and everything that I have survived. I went to the capital city and I enrolled at an American university, and it was through the only thing that has ever mattered, my education, that I was able to earn a scholarship and come to the United States. The U.S. Department of State granted me the Thomas Jefferson Scholarship for exchange students, and I was matched with the state of Minnesota. And I remember that August of 2016, I took my first trip ever. I've never been on a plane before, to St. Catherine University in St. Paul. I walked away from pain and ignorance into this bright, beautiful campus. And that's where I took off my hijab. That's where I mourned my lost childhood. That's where I addressed my mental struggles and celebrated my real birthday. My real birthday is the day I arrived to the United States. Because before that, I was not Meriem. That was the day I was born like the person I am. A feminist, atheist, free thinker who wants to love everybody and accept everybody, who wants to exercise freedom of speech, who loves cats and chocolate. That's who I am. That's who I am. And that's who I'm going to be forever. Today, I guess I am proud and sad at the same time. Like I told you, I do mourn my childhood a lot. Those were 18 years of my life. And I did not do anything wrong to deserve to have that painful childhood. But it's okay, because the day I arrived to this country, like I said, I have embraced my true identity. The fear was too much, and my feet were in denial. But my body felt like it breathed right for the first time ever. And I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because I was happy. And I slowly blossomed from this broken, ashamed Muslim child into this badass, independent feminist who wants to do politics and fight violence against women in the name of religion. I found my purpose here in Minnesota.
Well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about where you are and where you're going.
All right.
And forgive me, there's a big damn dog that keeps pounding on the door. No, I'm not letting you out. Stop. Sorry. He has to be an annoyance on every podcast.
Oh, I wish my cat was that cuddly. My cat is also a feminist. She's like, don't touch me. If I want to be touched, I'll come to you. Otherwise, you stay right there. So I can talk a little bit about my achievements. I guess my biggest achievement has been becoming the ethical, independent, resilient woman I have always meant to be. Then there is the support system and the friendships that I have built, where religion and personal preferences don't matter. It's all about love and kindness. Minnesota has gifted me my permanent housing unit, where I live peacefully and productively with my cat. Her name is Hope, by the way, because this is why I'm here today, to supply hope. I graduated last May, actually, and I'm also a certified medical interpreter. I work with the YMCA with kids. I make kids happy. I also am interning to become an activist and an advocate for ex-Muslims here in Minnesota. I just got my first car like a few weeks ago, and I travel Minnesota freely. I have my medication. I really have a good therapist. I like my therapist. And I have a purpose to work for. As a small Muslim depressed child, I did not have a purpose. I was actually looking forward to dying, because I I've never thought I will end up in this country, but it's miraculous. The fact that I'm here. I mean, I grew up in, I would say it was a poor family, or like a middle class, and according to Tunisian standards, we did not have a lot of money. Um, my mom was a single mom. We were rejected a lot. Me, my sister, and my mother. My sister used to call us the Three Musketeers, but because the three of us actually just could not fit into that society. So the fact that I'm here today, the fact that I own things that I have worked for on my own, the fact that I have survived, because I was not meant to survive. I was meant to die. I was meant to be censored. I was meant to be covered. Um, I think this is the American dream, and it's a live proof that the American dream is alive and well.
My audience is enjoying your story. They say it's amazing, and there's been a couple of very positive comments in here. Don't read the comments tomorrow, because I've noticed that after the second day or so, YouTube comments last about as long as tomatoes. Yeah, by the next day they're all bad.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to hear just a little bit about and welcome to the United States. And if you like driving around Minnesota, I can't wait till you get to experience Colorado, or Seattle, or Washington State, Western Washington State.
So my bucket list.
Or Arizona, which is one of my favorites. It's a great state for the diversity of the scenery and all of that. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about, what is your organization doing? How do people get in touch with you? How do people support you? And that sort of thing.
Yes, my first ex-Muslim activism, I guess, started by becoming a member of Ex-Muslims of North America. Those are our founding fathers. That's our backbone here. I guess my favorite thing about that, the best thing we do, is the campaigns and the events. My favorite campaign is Awesome Without Allah. I've contributed a few videos there, so go ahead, check them out. We do a great job telling the world why we're ex-Muslims and we're awesome without Allah. We don't need him to be ethical. We don't need him to be happy. We're happier and probably more ethical without him. So feel free to check that out. Unfortunately, lately, XMNA has decided to abolish the community concept, kind of. So they're helping the chapters become independent. And that's where we come. We are the new group. We used to be the Twin Cities XMNA chapter, and today we are Ex-Muslims of Minnesota. We are still beginners. We are taking baby steps, but we will get there, okay? You gotta start somewhere. We have a Twitter page, we have a YouTube page set up. We are working on coming up with a screening process so we can start accepting new members. We have a Facebook group. And basically, what are we trying to do? We're trying to build a community. We don't have to be an organization. We just want ex-Muslims out there to know that there are ex-Muslims who would love to be your friends, to tell you that you're not alone, okay? To tell you that we will be here for you. You do not have to sit in an abusive household that does not accept you. This is America. You can be free despite everything, even though in America, the political correctness and the censorship and the rejection could be a lot, but it's a great country and we can make it, okay?
It hasn't always been this bad in this country.
It's true. So this is why we're here. We gotta help. We love this country. We wanna do our best. This is why we're trying to raise awareness. When it comes to Minnesota, the way I think about it, I think you can think of ex-Muslims in Minnesota the same way homosexuals were treated in the 50s. I think most of us are still in the closet. Like, even if you're an ex-Muslim, you're probably not going to go public about it. We're probably still rejected. There were incidents where ex-Muslims were actually charged with trespassing. There was this one guy who was arrested at the mall just because he told two other Muslim people that he's an ex-Muslim. So the demographics play a role, and this is why we think this is very important. So if you're an ex-Muslim and you live in Minnesota, you're not alone. We're here for you, and join us because we can make this happen together. Other than that, check out Ex-Muslims of North America. I do believe they have an emergency fund. And that emergency fund goes to those who are trying to flee abusive homes. So
if there is a network, because I've talked to a couple of people that have been trying to establish a network to help people get out of, I'd have to sift through my earlier videos to pull up those links, and when I find them, maybe I'll put them in the description here. But there's so many people that are trying to escape the Muslim countries because there is no freedom of religion, there's no freedom of expression. When I was in Dubai for a whole week, I was told that I had just committed 2 offenses that either one of which, had anybody heard me or if I hadn't left immediately, would have put me in prison for up to 4 years. Yep. Because I don't know that you're not allowed to say things like that. That you're not allowed to say that here's why we know the Quran is wrong. That's a felony. I wouldn't have thought that, but so it is. So
I'm glad I was allowed to exist as a Muslim woman in a Muslim country. I'm very thankful, actually. If they're hearing me right now, thank you for allowing me to exist, because I know that was too much for you guys. I mean, when we talk about free speech in America, there's a battle going on out there. When it comes to Muslim countries, don't even worry about it. I think it is common sense by now. Criticize Charlie Hebdo. I mean, talk about the cartoonists all over Europe who have been slaughtered in public. Talk about the people marching. You cannot touch Islam, okay? You cannot criticize Islam. You cannot say that there is anything wrong with it, despite it being one of the main sources of suffering in the entire world, okay? You cannot touch Muhammad. And here, you get to talk about Islamic supremacy. Okay, I think this is a real thing, Islamic supremacy. Most Muslims believe that they are superior, that they cannot be touched, that their religion is better than everyone else. And that is dangerous, and we cannot let that happen. I think I was watching this documentary the other time, and I believe the United Nations is helping this organization called the Islamic Conference impose a global blasphemy code. The United Nations is saying, yeah, probably we should not anger Muslims anymore. Let's not criticize Islam.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that there was some pushback on that.
Yes, actually, just lately, also the Senate has adopted this bill where they're actually the senators are going to, the American government is going to fight on our behalf, and is going to fight these efforts who are trying to impose blasphemy laws or some sort of blasphemy code. And I believe XMNA was part of the task force trying to present that bill. So we're so proud. I think the work is out there, but I gotta tell you, Aaron, I think it's really scary. Okay, especially when it comes to the cry of Islamophobia in the West. Every time you say something, they're like, "That's Islamophobic. How dare you say that?" Let's even speak of this word, Islamophobia. I've never understood it. I thought phobia is an irrational fear. But if someone comes to me and they're like, I work in an American embassy in the Middle East and I'm scared someone is going to bomb me or slaughter me, I'll be like, bitch, you should be scared. I'm scared too. You know what I mean? Like, you should be.
It was somebody from XMNA, and I don't remember which name to call him, which one was his public name, which one was the name he was using, the activist. So I'm just not going to name him. But there was a speaker from ex-Muslims of North America. We met at a conference in California, I think, where he gave the speech that Islamophobia is not a thing because that's an irrational fear of Islam, and we have perfectly legitimate reasons to be afraid of this legal system, Sharia specifically. And so, I get that. I also want to invite you once or twice a month on Sundays at 5 p.m. Greenwich time, noon Eastern. That'll be, I think, that's 11 a.m. for both of us. I do Quran lessons for the infidel. And if you want to bash on the Quran a little bit, just the idea is I need people who are raised in Islam and who speak Arabic, who understand what the traditional interpretations of the scriptures are. You're more than welcome to join us when we do that. We'll be doing another one on the 3rd, I think it is, the first Sunday of January.
Thank you.
Meriem, I want to thank you very much for being on. If you have anything closing to say, I'll let you have at that. and then we'll close it up.
Yes, I think I would close by saying is that I know that I might get a lot of backlash from this, and I want to make it clear that I do not have a problem with Muslims exactly. I have a problem with Islam, and I am doing this work because my main goal is to decrease human suffering happening in the name of Islam, because I don't want my story to be repeated. And I want to give hope to many women out there, to tell them that it's possible. You can be free. There are countries out there who will provide you with refuge, and the American dream is still here. So join us.
The American dream is still here. Thank you for that.
Yes.
All right. Good night.
Thank you. Have a great night.